Man with a Movie Camera, released in 1929, is a pioneer of its time. Not only were there no stage sets, but there were no actors either, making it one of the first documentary-style films ever released. I believe that this film laid the groundwork for future documentaries, and it had employed many techniques to do just that. As stated before, there weren't structured sets or actors, so Dziega Vertov, the director, Mikhail Kaufman, the cameraman, and Yelizaveta Zvilova, Vertov's wife and editor, all had to get creative with what was shot and how it was edited. They had worked for 4 years trying to artistically demonstrate daily life as a citizen in the USSR. The film, with an average shot length of about 2.3 seconds, gives the audience quick glimpses into the culture, the architecture, and the people of the three main cities, Moscow, Kiev, and Odessa. Keeping them unnamed within the film, they are able to create intellectual montage, and don't need to worry about time or place consistencies. It was shot in the era of Joseph Stalin and had a Marxist framework, which makes the film more interesting from an intellectual standpoint. First, I want to address the documentary style. They do something very interesting and very experimental for the film. Rather than having the traditional mindset where they need actors and props and stage environments, all they need to do was document the world around them. These few clips demonstrate the mundane in an interesting and artistic way. The way that the trolley works, to the way that the people gather, to the way the mining is done. They did this by collecting 1,775 shots, many of which had different setups, making this task a grueling one. As such, they were able to create a very crude documentary. Second, I want to highlight the editing choices. Yelizaveta Svelova was the main editor of the project. She was able to create an interesting piece of artwork through inventive means. Although it was similar to a documentary, it had very political undertones and didn't necessarily demonstrate truth. The pacing and shot sequencing allowed for a more creative endeavor than something like the news. Also, something interesting to point out was the fact that the film was very self-referential. The audiences are reminded that they are watching a film similar to Spaceballs or Bo Burnham's Inside. Both of these films constantly remind the viewer that they are not in that universe, but are watching someone create something for entertainment. Very often they splice in footage of them shooting what you're seeing or just saw, as well as footage of them actively editing the film's final product. This experimental way of editing added a lot of value to the film world at the time and created something that is very interesting to watch. Lastly, I want to examine the practical effects and cinematography techniques that they had used. This being different from the editing choices because they had to go out and creatively shoot these shots and were able to do them digitally. Man with a Movie Camera was very experimental, and as such, they were able to do things that typical films at the time could not. These shots include special effects such as split screen and double exposures, as well as shots that went in reverse, which creates a much more interesting shot visually. Not only the visual effects, however, with different angles, they were able to capture extreme highs and lows, which convey their film in an untraditional way. To conclude, I believe that through their work with the creative documentary style, expert editing, and creative practical effects and cinematography, they were able to create a film that has impacted the film industry to this day. Even if filmmakers don't realize, the techniques we use today have been influenced by this film. I thought this movie was very interesting when I watched it, and rewatching it for the follow-through of this assignment, I was just fascinated. In the end, I think that this film is definitely worth a watch, even if you don't care about Russian life in the 1920s. It demonstrates the artistic skill of Dziga Vertov, Mikhail Kaufman, and Yelizaveta Vilova, and is a testament of the impact Russian filmmakers had on the industry.